Hello friends, and welcome to Led's Lap Guides. If you are newer to these guides, you will find that we are utilizing our very own Apex Visualizer to give you that overhead view that will hopefully help you shave off those tents that you're looking for. So often our racing lines just aren't as precise as they need to be, so here we're trying to give you that extra edge. Whether you want to watch the whole video or just focus on a corner or two that's giving you trouble for this week, these two lap guides are your resources to use however you need to get you the best time possible. This week brought us a couple of cool combinations. We managed a couple of top 300 times on Monday night, both at Catalunya circuit and Group 3 cars, and the pre-selected Group C cars at Le Mans. Strangely enough, there was not DR updates for Race C, but with dynamic weather, maybe that's not such a bad idea. A note about the Le Mans guide. These Group C cars are very different than the cars we're used to driving with the Group 2, Group 3, Group 4, which we often get. But the Group C's, not so much. So be on the lookout for those occasions in the guide where I point out those differences, as they could really be a game changer for you. So without further delay, let's see how we break these corners down. All right, so we're at the braking marker here, which is the digital flag over the left, right above me right there. Ba-bam! And what we're trying to do here is brake heavily in a straight line and then get the car rotated really well. So what we're going to use actually is the chicane. And so the chicane's not a perfect representation of this, but it does give us the idea of what's going on here. So this very much is the idea. So we're taking the corner as a late sweeper, okay, and coming around just like this, so that we're getting the car pointed towards this part of the track. And then what that does is it sets us up for a nice wider entrance for the second corner, okay? And which is important because we don't want to track out too wide. We don't want to go too far over to the right, because we need to set up for the third turn in this little sequence here, okay? So that's really critical. What that's going to look like on the actual track is breaking in a straight line through here, right, friends? And then critically, where is your turn-in point? You're turning in as you get to those marshals on the left there. So if you're using this view, for example, once you see that guy's head, the other guy's head right there, that's the idea of where you're doing that. Okay, and then so you're coming down to second gear. By the way, I think it's best to rev out fifth on the straightaway. Don't go to sixth. It's one less gear that you have to downshift. So I think that's critical there. So you get this nice wide entrance. And I'm using +5 brake balance. And if I time it right, the back end really comes out on the car. Just steps out enough so that it's giving me that extra little rotation, and it helps a lot. So then we get on the throttle through here. And depending on how you're feeling, you know, maybe stay in second. Some cars maybe get up to third. I think the Ferrari can do either. It's all about what you're able to control. But you're really trying to take a whole big chunk out of this apex here. So even hit this little sausage, it doesn't really unsettle the car. So that's kind of the line that I would recommend there. And then, like we talked about, you don't want to track out too wide. Get the car over to the left. And when you get to those marshals on the left, right there, okay, you see those on the left? I want you to yank the steering wheel to the right. Gotta yank it. You have to firmly transfer that weight over there, okay? Gotta do it. Otherwise, you're gonna be waiting for grip to build up, and you don't have time to wait. You just don't, okay? No, I don't really have a visualizer for this one because it's such a long sweeper, so let's just demonstrate it here in slow motion. So I think, you know, if you come in a little hot, go ahead and tap the brakes. But if you've timed the lift properly, you should just be modulating the throttle throughout here, okay? Just modulate the throttle, and you should be tightening to the apex. And then you're going to see that orange portion of the wall up in the distance. When you see that, okay, only if you have had a wide enough entrance, you've set yourself up properly, you can get on the throttle now and make the corner, okay? If you're seeing that orange barrier or orange part of the wall, getting on the throttle and not making the corner, that pretty much guarantees that you are not entering this corner wide enough, okay? So that's what I have to say there, all right? Your momentum should take you all the way out wide here. All right. You know, your braking point here really depends a lot on how much speed you've carried. But if you've carried the right amount of speed, so a good amount of speed, you probably want to start braking right about here. There is the 50 board right above me right there. It's not a bad spot to look. So maybe as that, if you're using this view, for example, as that clips your edge of your screen, that's not a bad spot to hit the brakes. Let's go ahead and look at the visualizer for this one. So what we have here is a very long 180 degrees. You end up, the actual track widens or opens up as you're turning right. But I do want to focus on the entrance, maybe not the exit so much of this visualizer, but focus on the entrance. This is the entrance you're looking for, okay? And you really got to be at your slowest at this point right here, and then get that weight firmly transferred once again, and then get on the throttle and come out. And then you can track out kind of wide, but not too wide. Honestly, if you've tracked out too wide, you're actually losing time, because you have to get back over to the right in order to set up for the left-hander coming up, okay? What that looks like on the actual track then. So let's look here then how we're going to go through this. So you take this little width right here, but then you tighten, okay? And you're on the throttle right about here. So look at, you're not full throttle yet. Let's make sure we understand that. But you see the Marshall box over to the left, or maybe the orange barriers, part of the barriers to the left as well, just above my camera screen here. Make that your acceleration marker. Again, if you have done a wide enough entrance, you can get on the throttle right here. Not fully yet, probably, but you can get on the throttle and make the corner. As you get on the throttle, see how the car responds. If the car immediately starts to go wide, it probably means you haven't transferred the weight well enough. You should not be really any wider than this by this point, okay? If you are a car width or more to the left at this point, you're probably either you're not getting a wide enough entrance, or you have had difficulty with getting on the throttle too soon. All right, this turn right here, I love this hairpin, especially when you get it right. It feels really good, especially in the Ferrari, gotta admit. So brake marker for this one is very scarcely seen. So I am using where just above the car where I'm sitting right now, where you have those tire marks on the curb there. That's kind of where I am braking. I'm waiting till I get right on top of them right here. This is where I'm braking. And let's look at the visualizer. This one can help us a lot with the visualizer. So it's not quite a 180 degree turn, but we're approaching it, that's for sure. Right, more like that. All right, so look at the line here. This is pretty much an exact representation of what you're trying to do here, friends. So make sure that we are getting a nice braking deep into the corner, allowing the car to rotate so that we can clip the apex nice and late, right? Nice and late. And then we actually are accelerating through this apex. So we want to be on the throttle right about here. That means we need to be at our slowest right about here, okay? If we do that, then we are really just going to be able to mash the throttle through here and track out wide. And really, when you do that, you can do this turn very quickly. A tendency for a lot of the tight corners, and even some of the faster corners for this track, is to be too hard on the brakes for too long, and then you end up going deep. So look on the actual track maybe, and you'll see a little bit what I mean there. So it's very easy when you get on the brakes. You're heavy on the brakes, and you're trying to turn, but you haven't come off the brakes at all. You see what I mean? And so you're getting a whole bunch of understeer, and it's taking you out here. Whereas the line that you want, while it does take you a little wide, it should be a smooth deceleration all the way through this point. And the only way you get that is by effectively trail braking off. So you get right here, you're at your slowest, up to second gear, and on the throttle. Some cars will be happy with a first gear exit. I think the Lambo, for example, would be good with a first gear exit there. This corner has a lot of time in it if you take it right. So let's look at the visualizer for a moment. It is effectively a 90-degree turn, but it has that nuance to it because it's got, you know, it's got that kink right around here, right? So what are we trying to do here? Well, oops, that was the wrong one. What we're trying to do here is widen our entrance so that we can straighten the car and then get on the throttle no later than mid-corner, right about here. I think that this is one of the most critical corners in the track where you need to not waste time coasting, okay? It should be a transfer of brake to throttle. You have to be you also have to be comfortable with going wide on the exit as well. That's how you're going to end up taking this quickly. So what this looks like on the track then is we're braking in a straight line, coming down from fourth, down to third, down to second, and we turn just before the end of the strike part of the curbing. Our momentum and weight transfer should take us out here. We really don't want to be on the green or even necessarily much on the curb either, as that does unsettle most cars. But this is where we need to be on the throttle. So like I said, we're trail braking all the way to here, and then bam, we commit to being on the throttle early, anticipating that we're going to go wide on the next portion of the track. That requires us to open the steering early enough so that we don't end up getting some power oversteer. So we're opening up right now, but we're not trying to stay on the asphalt. We're trying to come out here. Do you follow my meaning? So your momentum carries you out there, coming through here. All right, so this is an interesting corner because it's a very open right-hander. It feels like a quick one. So when I was practicing, it was really hard for me to commit to turning in late like I should. So I want you to take a look at this. It really is actually just a little bit beyond 90 degrees like that. But even with that, we have to apex just a little bit late. Don't apex mid-corner. We have to apex a little bit later, okay? That's part of it. What that requires is a later turn in. A little dab of the brake, perhaps a gear shift down. I like to downshift to third for the Ferrari. Downshift, and then yank the steering over to the right so you get that weight transferred and the grip to the outer tires really quickly. That should happen right around here. You're either trail braking or letting it coast depending on how much brake pressure you have applied. And then you need to be on the throttle by right here, if not earlier, okay? No later than mid-corner, but possibly even here. What that looks like on the actual track then is the actual turn-in point then is after the curbing has gone away. Maybe you could consider that F that's right above my my screen there as the turn-in marker. Down to third, and you see how we want this wide entrance so that we don't so the tendency is to apex at this little sausage on the right. Don't apex there. We should be on the throttle by now, and we should power through the apex right here. This is where we're apexing, okay? Our momentum then is going to take us nice and wide, but as long as you keep the right tires onto the curbing, you won't get a pen. Brake marker is the flag pole right on the right here. Let's break out the visualizer and see what this has to offer for us. Just to be very similar to the other tight corner. This is very much the line that we're looking to do. So braking heavy in a straight line, but braking deep, not apexing too early. Don't apex here, don't apex here. We got to apex way out here, right? So we get that rotation done and around just like that. And then we can get on the throttle no later than this part and track out wide, and honestly expect to be a little wide, but anticipate that. Make sure that you're opening the steering early enough so that you don't experience too much power oversteer. But one way or the other, especially if you're not using any TCS, be ready to catch that power oversteer, okay? All right, what that looks like on the actual track then, braking in a straight line. I'm trying to make it so that when the middle of my car hits that pole, that's when I'm on the brakes. Braking heavy in a straight line, going down all the gears, all the way to first. Turning very close to that F. Not, you're turning before that F, but that could be a visual for you. Getting the car turned all the way around here, up to second gear, and on the throttle by now. It's so critical to get so much of the rotation done before you get to the apex. Otherwise, you have to wait to get on the throttle. And waiting to get on the throttle, my friends, as most of you know, is really, really slow. But then commit to really clobbering this apex here. On the visualizer, it's interesting because in one sense, the track is... in one sense, the track is a 180, but in a sense it's not, because we're coming in from an angle. So I like to go ahead and kind of visualize it like this, just a little bit open, but this is really, really close to the line that we're looking for here. So we need to double apex this. We need to clip the first apex, come out a little bit wide, and whenever we double apex, we know that we need to be at our slowest at about mid-corner. This is where you need to be at your slowest. In the Ferrari, you're down to first to get that extra rotation, then you're back up to second, and then you power through the exit, clipping that second apex and coming out wide, okay? What that looks like on the actual track then is coming through here, you're in third, maybe a little lift there. I've noticed that this car can get a little unsettled through there, but you definitely need to clobber all of it. Down to second, hit the first apex, try to minimize how wide you go. Down to first, you're at your widest and your slowest right here, and you are at mid-corner, up to second, and power through this second apex. Okay, two corners that are very similar. Let's take them both back to back. So they're very similar in nature. Second one's a little bit faster than the first one, but right now, right here, you're lifting, okay? You're lifting right here. And maybe even a shift down, depending on the car. But you're really trying to commit to destroying this apex right here. I want you to cover it with almost your whole car, okay? That's going to set you up, but you have to make sure it's a wide entrance. If you clip this apex too soon, you're really going to have a tough time not going too wide out here, okay? So that's how we're approaching that. And then let's go, oh, and then the next turn, very similar. It's more of a 90-degree turn, but it's more open, so it's a bit faster. Try and maintain about, I want to say 97, 98 miles per hour on the second one. And that way you can, the car can handle it. The car can really do it. Just make sure you get all that rotation done before you get to the apex and push through the apex. Accelerate through it, okay? Don't accelerate here when you're tightest and then come out like that. The car's not going to do it. It's going to protest and you will go wide, okay? So let's look at these two corners on the actual track then. So here we are. Third gear, lifting, clobbering all of this apex as much as we can make sure we do. Then accelerating through here. Oh, let's talk about the braking point there. Braking point for here is tricky, but basically as these tire marks from the tighter chicane, from the chicane on this part of the track, those tire marks, as those meet the curb, that's when I'm braking. I'm in fourth and then I'm downshifting to third. I'm turning with this curbing, okay? Turning with this curbing. I'm getting as wide as you can, as you can see, because I want this nice wide entrance so I can be on the throttle by now. Accelerate through, clip the apex, accelerate through the apex, and go through like that. And that is a lap guide at Catalunya circuit. Love this circuit. Great stuff here. Okay, friends. Here we are with a lap guide at Le Mans. Really tricky combination, I feel like, because we've got cars that we're not used to driving, and definitely a measure of, you know, just unfamiliarity there. So you definitely got to handle these Group 1s differently, and we'll talk about that quite a bit as we go through the guide here. So let's look at this first one as a chicane. What we're gonna do, a very big chicane, but that really is essentially what it is. So you're carrying a lot of speed into this first corner. As you get to this point, you're full throttle, but you should be tightening to the apex here. And I've been braking right about as the curb gets straightens out right here, right in front here. So just about this spot is where I'm braking. So the best in the world are braking closer to that total sign. I'm having trouble, honestly, doing that. So, braking in a straight line through here, and let's look at the visualizer for our racing line. So this is really a really good representation of what we're trying to do here. So we're taking a wide entrance into this turn, clipping this apex, feathering the throttle, probably not going full throttle through here. We have to measure it and see how much speed we've carried, so be careful with that. But we're trying to at least be on, at least thinking about full throttle right at this point. And we really do. The biggest part, and what you're going to see a lot about this track, is murder, destroy apexes all day, all 3 minutes and change, whatever it takes you to do it. Just destroy each and every apex, okay? So, what that looks like on track for this little section here is coming up all the way here, get down to second, at the total sign, turn in, and get down to first. First is going to tighten you to this apex, and you really want to hit it just like this, okay? Up to second for for control and stability, clobber this apex, monitor the throttle and see what happens, and then come on out. For this corner, braking zone is just as these bollards go away. This is where you're braking. We have what is essentially a 90-degree turn. It's a banked 90-degree, so it's helping us out there in that regard. And so we're taking this. So, you know, with the Group 1 cars, they lack the ability to turn in. They don't have weight on the front tires. The front tires do not keep temperature. And so what you're constantly fighting is a high level of understeer. So as you brake hard and quickly in a straight line, you're dabbing down to second gear. You're modulating braking as you go in through, and then up here you get up to second, okay? Or sorry, up to third for exit. And then the next corner is basically the same, where it's almost identical, where you have to take it the same way. You're coming from the middle of the track, come back over to the left real quickly, and then bring the car over and watch and see how the car reacts. You know, one of the things that is really hard to keep track of with these cars is the weight transfer. You don't always know or feel when the grip is there. So when you get on the throttle, it's really a test. It's a lot of testing in that regard. So that's what that looks like there, okay? On the actual track, we have this look right here. So your third, braking down to second, letting second pull you in, tighten you in, up to third for exit. Try to maintain as much full throttle through here as possible. And then you got to be brave enough to really track out wide as much as possible, okay? Braking spot for this here is right about here. This is where I've been braking. To be honest, one of my cues is when the sector beep happens. That's part of when I know to hit the brakes. So I'm using my corner indicators, my driving markers here to help me out as well. So I know this distance is a big part of it. and then it's a really quick turn in. It's a dab of the brake, quick turn in for what is essentially just beyond 45 degrees. And you have to be super brave on this turn here. So get the bulk of the turning done. Apex a little bit late, but clobber this apex. Get on the throttle, and the wide entrance is super key, because if you don't, you're gonna end up going wide. And it's strange. There's like, this is like a mystical corner, man. You feel like you've got it. You feel like even you're following the ghost to a T, and you end up going just that little bit too wide, and you get that half-second penalty, which is just a pain in the tuchus, for real. So, looking at the actual track then, right there, you're going like that. Your turn in is right here, and you need to be all over this apex like this. On the throttle, your momentum will carry all the way out, and then you just got to get back before the curb ends. Get your right tires on the inside of that white line. Now for a really long straight. I think Mike number 5 said this would be the most interesting part of the lap guide. It was a nice thought, but I think he's wrong. So my braking spot is the end of the white line here. That's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to keep it a little bit wide, because you got to have a wide entrance. So let's talk about this corner from the perspective of the visualizer. It's a pretty tight corner, and this really depicts it well. You really have to get this car turned. Okay, so one of the biggest parts where I was losing time, and am still losing time, I should say also, is being patient enough to get the car turned and pointed to the exit before getting on full throttle. So I don't, be 75, 50%, 25% throttle in this vicinity. You're on the throttle here. There's no doubt about that. But wait until the car is turned fully to be full throttle, maybe about out this direction here. You gotta wait, because all that power oversteer is just, it is maniacal to try and handle. And so, and then if you're using TCS, the more you're having to turn your steering wheel on exit, the more that TCS is going to activate and slow you down also. Okay. So let's go ahead and look at the actual track. So we're braking in as straight of a line as possible through this part. Braking all the way to get to this white line. Now I am using first gear for an added bit of braking power and a bit of more rotation. The best in the world are able to stay in second, so be advised of that. What I found is, if I'm doing this, I need to be back up to second by this spot right here, so that I can begin to put power down to start gaining grip, gaining traction. Okay, so this is where I want to be on the throttle, but I'm only, I'm fluctuating, and then until I'm straight, that's when I'm muscling out of the corner. Okay. Next sequence of turns is Indianapolis, I believe. So, right here, you want to be as close to full throttle on this right-hander as possible. Commit to it. Commit to being tight to the right, okay? That's really going to help you out a lot. Let's look at what that line looks like here. I won't bother with the visualizer for that one, though. Clobber as much of this apex as you can. Now, if you have to lift a little bit, like I've had to sometimes, feel free to do that. It's better to sacrifice a wee bit of speed to stay to the right, because if you're over to the left too much, it's going to be really tough to take this next corner. So, speaking of the next corner, this is a good look at it right here. We're sweeping. This is a sweeping turn. We're decelerating all the way through here. Really, really key. It feels like you can take like 75, 76, 77 miles an hour into this apex. Don't. It will send you too wide on exit. Shoot for about 70, 71. Okay, right at mid corner. Shoot for that. Get on the throttle mid corner, and you'll make the corner. And I think it's going to be faster. I really, really do. carrying that much speed, again, that understeer that you're feeling, it just pulls you out to the wide, and it's just no good. Okay, so what that looks like on the actual track, then at this point, this is where you're starting to brake fully in a straight line, downshifting the third, downshifting the second, braking all the way here until we get here. We should be at about 70, 71 right here, and then you're on the throttle, coming out wide and then coming back. One of the slowest, and I think it might be the slowest corner in the track. So we're braking just before this second Gantt sign over on the right by my tire temps there. And let's look at the visualizer here for this one. Really tight, nasty corner. So get it nice and turned. Once again, throttle mid-corner, ease on the throttle, wait for the car to turn, then punch it. Punch it to like 80, 90%, then full. You'll get the most traction that way, and you'll end up exiting the fastest that way, okay? On the actual track then, we're looking at braking in a straight line from here. Again, I'm using first for extra braking power and rotation, but I'm back up to second right here, getting on the throttle right here, waiting till the car turn, and then working my way up to full throttle. All right, braking spot for this is the Porsche curves, right? So this first Goodyear sign on the left, that is your braking point, okay? Now these S's are a lot of fun. They feel really sketchy, but when you get them right, they feel really good. And honestly, I think this is where the Merc really shines, because you can take this very fast, and that's why this is the meta for the week as far as qualifying time goes. As far as race goes, I think because of the top speed, the Nissan is where it's at. All right, so long sweeping corners. Visualizer will help us. I'm just gonna look at for the first one. These are very similar. So what we're trying to do is widen each corner, okay? So that we go wide, we tighten, okay? And then once we get to the other part, again, we go wide and we tighten. We do that for 1, 2, and 3 corners, 4 corners in a row. That's what these Porsche curves require, okay? So let's look at the actual track then and what that looks like. So again, braking here, we're in 4th gear, we're let 4th gear rev out, and then downshift to 3rd and be minimal braking. Your objective is then to tighten to this inside corner, get as close to the apex as you can, get over to the right, up to 4th at this point. The car is handling it beautifully. Widen, get nice and wide, and then tighten back up to this. Use 3rd gear to tighten up and braking, and then keep it nice and tight. You're decelerating through this entire portion here. And then if you've done it right, at this RMC sign right here, you need to turn immediately before you get to this sign. And just a little dab of the brake. Why? This is where a lot of time is lost. So you've got to be able to turn here so that you can crush this apex. I mean, I need you all the way over here, if not even more. So that when you're full throttle through here, so you're full throttle before you get to this apex, right? And you end up carrying your speed. The key is your left tires need to get back onto the left side of the white line before it goes gray and the curb ends. That way you don't get a pen, okay? The best in the world are braking just as they get to the split in the white lines up ahead. I'm backing that up for myself and being right about here. It's much more comfortable for me, but I am going this wide because I'm trying to widen this entrance. Now, we've got a decelerating chicane, and then you accelerate just for a little bit, but you set yourself up for the next slower chicane. So looking at a chicane then in this regard, this is what we're trying to accomplish here, okay? So trying to get, once again, just like the S's that we talked about before, the Porsche curves. Here, we're trying to be nice and wide. Come in, clobber this first apex, widen, clobber the next apex. Well, look, we can go ahead and you can track out wide for a little bit, but then get back to the right and then set up for the next chicane. So what that looks like on the actual track, almost finished here. Gear down to second, clobber this first one, decelerate through here, back on the throttle, down to first, again, clobbering this first one. You try and shoot for right here. This is where you're at your slowest. Be at your slowest right here. Be in the 55 to 60 mile per hour range. Up to second. Throttle inputs right there, and then full throttle once you get straight. And that is a lap guide for Le Mans. And that's going to do it for this edition of Led's Lap Guides. Please give this video a like, and if you aren't a subscriber yet, please become one so you can continue to get helpful videos like this one and stay up to date on all the live streams, shorts, and videos we put out on a regular basis. We'll see you real soon, friends. Bye.